something that was designed originally to have a hinge and now doesn't. And the thing that really kind of confuses me is that now you've taken a device that we think is designed for children and people with perhaps smaller hands and smaller bodies, and now you've made it bigger because it can never fold in half.
But did you see how big it is? I don't know if it's that much bigger. Like, it's still pretty darn tiny. Like, look at it next to that little kid who zips it up into his little carrying case. It is small.
Are we talking about the video, or are we talking
yeah,
about
look at the video. Like, it's hard when you see it just by itself. You think it looks like, you know, some gigantic, like, I don't know. But like, look at it next to the, like, it's practically a toddler putting it away. It is still small. I think it's still a reasonable size for a kid to tuck in his backpack to go on a car trip, to have something to play in the car or on vacation or something. Like, I don't think it's too big.
It's certainly not huge, but I don't, maybe it's me, and I don't get the way it looks like it's supposed to have a hinge and just doesn't. Like they forgot it rather than they designed it out.
See, the thing with the one with the hinge is a lot of 3DS games, like there's shoulder buttons on it as well. There's face buttons, shoulder buttons, and you've got the analog stick and the D-pad, and you've also got a stylus for the bottom touchscreen. And some games try to use like all those controls at once. And like famously, I think it was the Pilot Wings. Chat room can tell me. Not Pilot Wings. Kid Icarus, whatever the Kid Icarus game for the 3DS. Come on, chat room, wait for the delay to go. Anyway, there was one game that Nintendo came out with. They required you to use like the stylus at the same time as the analog stick at the same time as the shoulder button, and the game came with like a little plastic stand thing because Nintendo recognized that trying to manipulate the machine in this manner while also supporting it is actually very difficult. So find a table, use this special plastic stand to prop it up into the right position, and then you can play our game. And that's kind of a failure of like game design and hardware design. Like, it's kind of ungainly to be trying to be holding like basically like a little miniature laptop that folds open, a little clamshell thing, while using all these controls all over it, and sometimes using a stylus and everything. I think the tablet form factor gives a better grip on the overall thing. Like the fact that it's just one big solid piece instead of some floppy thing. Chat room says Kid Icarus Uprising was the game, so I was close. I think that form factor may actually be better for certain. Unfortunately, it's probably worse for some games that were designed around the clamshell factor, because some games, like someone was saying that in Metroid Prime Hunters, like, it's going to be very difficult to play that game because it was designed around the position of the controls for the folding game, where the controls were lower down, nearer to the touchscreen, and now they're sort of slid up. But I think overall, it'll feel more secure in your hands, this one piece, instead of having that strange hinge thing at various angles. So again, I don't think this is necessarily a loser product, and I think they might sell a lot of them.
And actually, I'm now looking at an image of what appears to me to be the 2DS, what was the non-3D one, the DS, and the 3DS. And you're right, I didn't realize...
That's 2DS, 3DS, and 3DS XL.
Yeah, there's also the DSi, which is the same size as the DS. And there was the old DS before they redesigned it. Put it in the chat room or something so we can...
So that's where I got it from. It was from...
Was it a joystick one?
MediaLib.
It's from Alex Sabinsky.
Yeah.
So anyway, whatever it is I'm looking at, compared to that monstrosity on the right, it actually doesn't look that big at all.
That's the XL, and that's the one I would buy, by the way, because it's made closer for adult hands.
So that's designed to be a monstrosity? I'm not trying to define it.
Yeah, the whole point of that one is to be larger for older people who have trouble seeing, and, it costs a little more because you have a bigger screen, but if you're an adult, you don't want to have your hands on those.
Yeah, but you're the only adult wanting to buy a 3DS.
Well, I don't. I would already have one. I don't play handheld games at all because they're terrible for RSI. Like, you can't make a really ergonomic controller out of something when the controller is also the game system and the screen and has to be portable. So I understand the compromises there, and I kind of missed out on some of the games that I would like to play. Like, I wish, what is it, Gravity Rush? I gotta ask the chat room again to confirm, my memory's failing. But anyway, there's a game for the Vita that I would really love to play, but I'm not gonna buy a handheld gaming system to play it, and I keep hoping it would come out for the PS3 or something.
Wasn't there some, like third-party, or maybe it was first-party bots that you could get way back in the day to play original Game Boy games on the TV?
Yeah, there's a lot of products like that, and I keep hoping that there will be some kind of product, or maybe the virtual console games where 3DS only games will. Someone says it's pronounced Vita. What did I say?
I thought that's what you said. Is that Vita?
I'm not going to say Vita. Anyway, Yeah, I keep hoping that these games that I've been missing on handheld will eventually come to a system that I can play, somehow on my television, holding a slightly more ergonomic controller in more comfort.
So you're saying that tentative thumbs up for the system. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad that Nintendo has to go to these lengths. This is not a power move. This is not like, oh, we're on top of the world and now we're so successful that we can do this. This is kind of like, look, the Wii U is doing really badly. The 3DS has actually kind of picked up in recent, years. It's not, that has a chance for some growth. What can we do to get more money out of the part of our business that actually is successful? Maybe we make a cheaper version around holiday time. People more likely to buy it for their kids. Because their kid wants an iPad mini, but we can't afford that, so we're going to buy a $130 3DS or 2DS. And honestly, I think that 2DS, the games that are available for the DS, because it plays any DS game plus any 3DS game. So there's a huge game library available with this. And I would put the game library that thing can play up against 7 App Store game libraries. Not that there aren't great games in the App Store, but the depth of game available on that device and the type of gameplay experiences that you can have with buttons and shoulder buttons and sticks and the touchscreen and the stylus and all that other stuff just puts the iOS gaming experience to shame. So I would be totally comfortable buying this less expensive device. Now, granted, the games are going to cost you more or whatever. Buy this less expensive device and 2 games in the kid's stocking for Christmas. And I think even though the kid wanted an iPad mini, if he's the right age and he is a gamer, he would be much happier with this device.
So 2 very sore thumbs up.
Yeah, pretty much. Real-time follow-up. Prehinra in the chat room says it was a Super Game Boy for Super Nintendo that I was thinking of, which it was.
Oh, yeah.
So then, John, you kind of started down this road and then backed away. What do you think this means as a barometer for the health of Nintendo and their power in the marketplace? I mean, it's certainly, like you said, doesn't seem like this was the move of the king. It seems like it was the move of the competitor almost. So, I mean, how does this make you feel as a Nintendo fan?
Yeah, I think that it's a good thing Nintendo made all that money during the Wii era, because now their rainy day fund, it's now time for them to start using it. And I think they do have some breathing room to regroup. Doing these type of moves is like, okay, let's shore up the dam while we try to regroup. And I really hope they are regrouping, because they have some breathing room. They made tons of money with the success of the Wii. The Wii U is tanking. They have to decide: are we going to try to recover the Wii U? Do we think they already did the price drop on that one? They dropped the good one, the one that you really want, from $350 to $300. So that's a good move too. The reboot, the HD remake of Wind Waker, which appeals to old people, is going to be available early in digital only form. That's also a good move. Like when you have a kind of an important popular title that people are going to want, release it early in digital form to sort of reward people who don't want to go to the store and buy a disc. I think the digital one might also be a little bit cheaper. So those are good moves, but are they going to stick it out with the Wii U? Or are they going to rev the Wii U way before everyone else revs? Because there's no PS5 and Xbox. We don't want to ever think of the name. Those aren't coming out for many, many, many years. But Nintendo could, produce a new console in the next 2 years. Is that their reboot plan? Or surely they're not going to stick with the Wii U for 8 years. 8 years from now, pull out this podcast and play it back to me. I don't even think that's, you know what I mean? So I would like to know what their strategy is, but I think they have a little bit of breathing room, and I think these type of moves are while we're figuring out what we're going to do, let's see what we can do to get a little bit more money out of these good areas. I mean, a lot of the problem could just be software. Maybe that's their strategy to regroup, and we really need to be firing on all cylinders with first-party software.
Well, to that end, are we going to see Zelda and Mario in the App Store anytime soon?
I hope not. People keep saying that. I mean, Gruber said it today, they should start selling for the iOS store. Whether or not that's I don't think that would be a good long-term business strategy for Nintendo, the company. But as a consumer, as someone who plays Nintendo games, I would not like that at all. Because the thing I love about Nintendo is that they make hardware and software combined. They make a complete gaming experience. They tailor their hardware to fit the software they want to buy, they want to make. And no one else does that to the degree they do. And I love their games, and I would not want to play their games on a touchscreen.
Well, but you're assuming it's a touchscreen.
Or with any of those little controller things that Apple now supports. It's not the same thing. I don't think they should do that. Nintendo doesn't think they should do that. I don't think that would make anybody happy. It would turn them into Sega, where it's like, oh, all right, well, Sega's out of the hardware business. I guess we'll just make games now. And, you know, people are not excited about Sega games, even though they are available. Aren't Sega games available on iOS? Pretty sure.
Yeah, a lot of them are.
Yeah. Like, who cares?
Mostly terrible.
Who cares? Nobody cares. Whereas, even as Nintendo fails, if they make a really good Zelda game for the Wii U, it will make a lot of people very happy. Even if it doesn't make Nintendo a lot of money. So I'm one of those people who wants Nintendo to keep being Nintendo, and I would be willing to, like, have the Japanese government subsidize them to keep making it happen.
I'm actually with you on that. I think people calling for Nintendo to just make stuff for iOS is a lot like people who used to call for Apple to just license Mac OS to PC hardware.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
I think it's, you know, obviously Nintendo makes a lot of money on their hardware, and that's the business they're in. And so if, you know, licensing their games to other platforms would be really giving up, and it would probably lead to a dramatic shrinking of the company and probably a lot of ruining of what's best about them. The question is, you know, Apple avoided that by finding another way out of their predicament. The question is, can Nintendo do that?
Well, Nintendo's weathered a lot of ups and downs. Like, the Nintendo 64 was the beginning. The Nintendo 64 and the GameCube were another pretty big, deep trough where, like, oh, we're totally counting Nintendo out. And then they came out of nowhere with the Wii. And now we're, you know, it's like a roller coaster. So now they're on their way back down again. How how far down is this going to go before they make a U-turn again? Like, again, I think they're protected by their patience, by their determination, and by the mountains of money that they make during the high periods that they presumably spend wisely. Like, I don't think they don't spend money extravagantly. They don't have humongous staffs. They are fairly conservative with what they spend, what their burn rate is. So I'm hoping they can weather this storm and come out the other side.
All right, and with that, let's wrap it up for the week. Thanks a lot to our two sponsors this week, WordBoxApp.com, that's the app WordBox, and Notograph, notograph.net/ATP. And we'll see you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
What kind of weird reality are we in where I was agreeing with you, Marco, about enterprise-related things?
Well, you're the two PC users, so you still have that, you know, infection coursing through your veins in trace amounts.
I don't even know how to argue with you on that one. Probably right. I'm surprised you're so happy about the 2DS.
I'm
not saying you're wrong.
I'm not happy about the state of Nintendo's in, but I don't think the product deserves the ridiculous game. Like, it's not attractive looking either. There's many things against it. It's embarrassing kind of joke name. It's not attractive looking. It looks ungainly and awkward. But I think it's an okay product. And like I said, there's 7 DS products that I think you can buy now. I think you can still buy the DS. Then there's the 3DS. There's 3DS XL. Then there's the DSi. Then there's the 2DS.
What the hell is a DSi?
They added a letter to, I think that's the one with like more internet connectivity and extra cameras, and there's a whole bunch of, like, they have tons of products.
Do they still suck at internet and social things, or have they gotten better at that?
Nope, they still suck. They still suck.
Well, that sounds.
I mean, they have gotten better though. You can't say they haven't gotten better, but they are still pretty crappy at it. And like part of it is that philosophy of like protecting kids, and you know, like a lot of the things they do are to avoid what happened on the Xbox. Like, hey, the Xbox Live does it the best, but it's also the place where you go and will immediately be bombarded by teenagers saying racist and homophobic things to you, and God forbid if you're a female, right? So Nintendo does not have that problem for the most part, and has avoided it by keeping people away from each other. You know what I mean? Keep them separated. And now they're slowly trying to allow some kind of interaction on a trusted basis, and you know they're trying to avoid becoming Xbox Live, basically.
Which is sad because Xbox Live is, with the exception of the 10-year-olds swearing at you and calling you horrible names, it's actually very successful in all other ways.
Yeah, no, it is the best gaming. It is the best one, and yeah, it suffers from all those terrible ailments. But everyone's like, who is doing console online best? It's not Sony and it's not Nintendo. It's Microsoft. But Microsoft also, in typical fashion, like, is that the price of good online that you have to deal with jerks? I'm not sure it's the price of it, but like Nintendo and Sony were just mostly incompetent. Like they didn't have. They had people who make games. Like Sony has less of an excuse, but Nintendo was like, look, they had a bunch of people who make games, a bunch of people who make hardware, and then all of a sudden they're expected to make network services. They must have had to hire people to do that because, do we have anyone who knows how to run a server here? Or what? So, like, that's been the past many years, but they are getting better and they're slowly learning, but they're doing it very cautiously. I remember one of their first forays was you had to have friend codes, which was like this 9-digit number or something that you would exchange, because that way you couldn't accidentally see somebody who would say something terrible to you or try to abduct you or whatever, right? It was so hard to connect with somebody. The only people who would ever connect would be like you and your best friend after 6 tries.
Yeah, did anybody actually ever do that?
I did.
Yeah, no, I did.
We played Mario Kart Wii over the internet against friends of ours, and this was shortly after Mario Kart Wii came out, and I was on Fios, and my friend was on a reasonably quick Comcast connection, and it was a total disaster.
But that's not friend codes. That was the better iteration. Friend codes were back, I think, the DS, someone in the chat room told me, but it was before the Wii. Were the friend codes.
Oh,
the Mario Kart Wii was like, that was the improved version. Now see how much easier it is for you.
God awful.
I know, but it was still better. Like, it was. They've been slowly making it slightly better and more possible to do, but they're a long way from it just being a free-for-all, and I think that's a problem. Like, the Wii U has a lot of things where people can scroll notes to each other, and they must have, like, a fleet of people, or, like, Amazon Mechanical Turk or something, like, filtering out all the penis drawings and stuff, because it's just, like, it's got to be moderated, like, because if you go to a certain level and you die and you fall in a pit in a Mario game, it'll be like, you get to see a little message from somebody who keeps dying there too, and it's always something nice like, oh, I keep dying here, like, and it's not like curses or vulgar drawings or whatever, so someone must be filtering all them out, and I would not want that job.
No, definitely not.
So our friend Ben Thompson, who we were talking about at the very top of the show, is in the chat room, username MonkBent, and he's asking me my thoughts on the new Microsoft, oh god, how many words are in this title? The Microsoft Sculpt Ergonomic Desktop Keyboard. It was the successor to the Microsoft Natural Ergonomic Keyboard 4000. So,
yeah, Microsoft doesn't have any problems.
No, they have the worst names of anything in the industry, especially their non-critical products, like all the side stuff. Oh, it gets terrible names.
I think Nintendo gives them a run for their money. New Super Mario Brothers Wii.
Fair enough. But yeah, so far, we should talk about Jeff Atwood's keyboard too. This is pretty cool. The Code keyboard. You saw this?
I don't know. I saw that. I don't understand what makes it cool other than some dip switches on the bottom.
I can tell you what makes it cool and what makes it a PC user's keyboard. And what makes it cool is that it's a single person's vision for what a keyboard should be. So, like, that is something that I think Apple fans can get behind. Like, regardless of what the product is, like, this is a single person's vision. Like, he knew exactly what he wanted, and he made a keyboard that in every aspect of this is presumably exactly how Jeff Atwood wanted it. And so there is a certain, attraction to that.
And he's really he's like a nerd's nerd too. Like, Jeff Atwood is like exactly the kind of guy you would want to design a keyboard if you're a nerd.
And you may not like what his decisions are, but there's, the Apple fans can totally get behind this. Like, it's an interesting product because it is a singular vision. But his singular vision is for a keyboard that looks and behaves like the Code keyboard, which is not to my tastes at all. I mean, I don't think it's even to Marco's taste because he likes the split keyboard, right? So this is not split because he didn't want that, right? Right. This has big keys with long throws and clicky keycaps, which I used to like, but now I don't. Now I need a very light pressure, short throws, like, for RSI reasons or whatever.
Like so scissor keys.
Yeah, so it's not a keyboard that I would ever buy or be interested in. I don't think it's attractive looking either. I think it looks like a PC keyboard because it is a PC keyboard, even though you can rewire it for the control key. I don't think the text on the keycaps looks nice. It totally does not appeal to me, but the idea of it definitely appeals to me. And if you want it, if your interests and keyboard tastes align with Jeff Atwood's, then this is the one to get, because some guy went out there and made something happen that, that you could not have made on your own. You would have been like, well, which one of these 17 keyboards do I want? I can't really decide. But it's like, this guy cut through all the fat and made the keyboard that he wanted to make, and now is selling it to you. So it's a very, very appealing product, but I don't think I would ever buy it. And I'm assuming Marco would say the same.
Yeah, I think, Jeff and the other people involved, but it looks like it's mainly Jeff on the design and concept side. They've made what appears to be, I haven't tried it yet, but it appears to be a really good implementation of the same old keyboard we've been using forever. And to a lot of people, that's exactly what they're looking for. A lot of people, like, it's going to appeal a lot to the people who are still holding on to IBM Model Ms, or who try to find them on eBay, because it's like, it's like the keyboard. And like, if you want the standard key layout that's been around forever, and you want a really good implementation of that, then this is the one for you, because it has everything that geeks love. It has the Cherry MX key switches, the big, like, clicky loud ones that are really, that have great feedback.
Well, these are the quiet ones. The Cherry keys are quieter.
Oh, right. Right.
That's the aspects that he wanted. He likes the click keys, but didn't like the, calamitous noise that some of them make. So the Cherry Clear ones are. He has a whole big keyboard post about the different color of Cherry keys with this, but fair enough.
But yeah, so it's a very good implementation of the same keyboard that's been around forever. My dream keyboard, so I got this Microsoft many words ergonomic sculpt keyboard, and so far I've only had it for half of today. So obviously this is not any kind of long-term impression. So far, I think it's pretty good. But they chose to use scissor keys on it, and just like laptop keyboards and all of Apple's recent keyboards. So it's like the short throw, flat top scissor switch on the bottom, and it's not mushy like the old dome switch. I mean, not dome, the old membrane one was. It's not mushy like that, because that was the problem with the original Natural 4000, the predecessor to this one, was that it had just the mushiest, crappiest keys. And this one has like decent scissor keys on it. I would say probably as good as any Apple laptop keyboard recently, possibly even a little bit better, a little bit springier or firmer, I guess. So I like the keys so far. I haven't typed full time on a scissor keyboard in a very long time, so I don't know if it's going to be better or worse for potential RSI issues for me, but I'm hoping it'll be the same just by the layout. It should be alright. So we'll see about that. But my dream keyboard doesn't exist. My dream keyboard, the way I envision it today, is basically this keyboard with Jeff Atwood's key switches. And that, as far as I know, does not exist. And everybody always recommends this one keyboard. It's called Truly Ergonomic. Here, I'll paste the link in the chat. Everybody always recommends this, and they say, why haven't you tried this? Oh my god. And the reason why I haven't tried that is because of that ridiculous layout that it has. I really do not like ergonomic keyboards that have weird custom layouts. And this one is, as weird layouts go, it's kind of moderate. Like, it doesn't go totally crazy like the Kinesis Advantage, but it's kind of in the middle between regular keyboards and that. So it's very, very strange, and I don't like those kind of layouts because that involves a very high learning curve, and it makes it a little bit difficult to go between different computers, and I frequently have to use a laptop here and there, or a TIFF's computer here and there, or someone else's computer here and there, and so I really like having just one standard keyboard layout that my fingers know and are accustomed to, and that's it. I also think the Truly Ergonomic one doesn't have the right shape. It's not... See, what makes the Microsoft keyboards great is they have this giant hump in the middle, and then it curves down from there, and they have this great negative tilt where the keyboard actually tilts slightly away from you in the, I guess, relatively vertical direction from you. It tilts away from you so that it's extremely comfortable. And in theory, I don't know, how many studies have proven this. In theory, it should be very, very good for RSI prevention. So Microsoft has a great way of making those keys, or those keyboards with the best shape and the most usable layouts. But so far, like the Natural 4000 was this giant ugly boat with mushy keys, and the new Sculpt ergonomic desktop keyboard is way better looking. I mean, it's just, you could tell, like, I've already started writing my review just of, like, my initial impressions, and, it's so obvious. Like, you look at the Natural 4000, and you look at, if you do a Google image search for Dell Dimension 2005, you will see that's what PCs looked like in 2005 when the Natural 4000 was designed. And it the Natural 4000 looks just like the PCs of the day. By today's standards, it looks ridiculous, and not in a good way. And so the new Microsoft Sculpt blah 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 is quite good. It looks nice. The keys feel pretty good. I like it better than the Kinesis Freestyle 2 for Mac, which I was using for the last year. I like it better than that, and I think it'll be okay. My one reservation is on the key type, and it being scissor keys. I'm a little bit worried about that.
I think the key to getting any kind of RSI benefit out of scissor keys is you can't hit them as hard. Like, the whole point of them is that they activate easier, but it doesn't mean that people actually don't hit them as hard, because people get into the habit of just pressing as hard as they used to have to press, and that's actually hard, especially when you get, like, you know, when you get going, you get a big head of steam, you may find yourself hitting the keys as hard as you used to have to hit, like, your mushy keyboard or whatever you're using before, and that's the habit to try to break. Like, that's what I've had to do.
Right, exactly. And it actually helped a lot. Like the Kinesis Freestyle 2 that I've been using for about the last year has extremely light press key switches for that reason. You know, it's not scissor keys, but it's very, very light press regular keys, and so I've kind of gotten used to that, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I'm using the Apple aluminum keyboard now. Since I don't type correctly, I have extreme difficulty with any layout changes, because like I'm using the wrong hands and the wrong keys. I'm doing everything wrong, right? So split keyboards like paralyze me because I can't use them. But what I try to do is like do everything I can within a standard layout, which means very light key presses, but also like get it to slope away from me. Like that's all. Remember, keyboards used to come with like kickstands in the back. Like it was just torturing yourself. Like the more you tilt it up, the worse it is. Like so.
Even the Natural 4000 for some reason came with those. I don't know why. Like the Natural 4000, it has this big stand you can put on the front lip that lifts it to get the negative tilt. But you don't have to put it on. And it had these giant stands in the back so you could set up your perfectly awesome natural keyboard to be terrible for you.
Yeah, people expect it.
I know. This one, the clip-on front prop thing is still optional, although now it's magnetically attached, so it's much cooler. But there's no more rear stands; those are just gone. So you can't set this up as terribly as you could the other one.
Yeah, so I'd say for people who have keyboards in there, start off with just trying to make it level. Like, let's start with that, because almost every keyboard, including the Apple aluminum, has some kind of tilt in the wrong direction, where, like, if you put a marble on it, it would roll downhill into your lap. You want to try making it level. Just start with that. And you can do that by propping it. You can do that by, if you have an adjustable keyboard tray, just tilting that or whatever. And maybe you don't have to go negative with it, but, small changes can make a big difference over a long period of time.
Yeah, John, I would say, given what you just said, I think you might want to try this keyboard.
I can't do split.
Have you ever tried really giving it a real solid try?
I've never given it more than a week, but a week has been enough so many times because I just have bad, terrible habits that are not compatible with a split keyboard layout. And the thing is, rather than adapting, I adapt my bad habits to it. I end up crossing over I'll find myself doing that, and then I find all I'm doing is honing my increasingly terrible crossover habits on a split keyboard. So,
well, this one actually has a physical gap between the two tabs. You could if you wanted, you could stick a DVD case in that gap upright to block you from crossing over if you wanted to train it.
Yeah, I think they would not. One of the chat rooms suggesting I learn Dvorak. The person next to me at work does that. Aside from being a mild security through obscurity hack, because whenever he leaves his computer unattended, it's more difficult for me to screw with it because I can't find what the damn keys are. Because, of course, the keycaps are all QWERTY.
Right.
I'm probably past the point where I can learn new keyboard layouts or new keyboard shapes. But who knows? Typing is really not, I don't think that's my biggest issue. I think my hand positioning and stuff like that is not as bad as it used to be. So just going flatter and getting the keyboard at the right height is 90% of the problem was for me anyway. I think for most people, most people have their keyboard way too high and tilted up.
Honestly, I really do think you should try this, even with DVD case hack if you need to, because obviously you probably have a more severe problem than I did, but I was starting to get RSI symptoms back when I about a year into my first job after college, because I was just constantly on the computer and constantly on bad keyboards. And the keyboard, I changed the keyboard, and that was the number one helping thing, by far.
Well, the number one helping thing is typing less. That is the number one thing, and I think you probably made that adjustment, because that's when I had my problems, was when I had no life and no kid, and and I was just on the computer from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to sleep, whether I was working or not, constantly typing, and that's what killed me. And, you have a more balanced life where you only type for certain periods of time and then do other things that don't involve typing for some portion of your waking hours. It's amazing things happen. So,
no, I definitely didn't do that. I mean, I continued not to have a kid, not to have a life for about 5 years after that. And with no changes, no reduction. In fact, probably an increase in computer use after that.
Well, you are lucky, because I could not do that no matter what I was using. Mouse, keyboard, any shape, anything, because I was that mad. And also my keyboard always used to be way too high. Like, that was, if I had to pick my number one thing that I did was, once I crippled myself, was put the keyboard lower. So that's where I felt my biggest change. Maybe I felt similar increase if I had got a split as well, but if I had the split and kept that up high, I would have still been killing myself.
So, are we getting to the point then that, in the same way that everyone was making T-shirts right before WWDC, is it going to be soon trendy to make your own keyboard? Is that going to be like the next big thing?
I don't think that's something that regular people can do. I think you have to be Jeff Atwood to make that happen. And honestly, if I had to make my own,
John Syracuse or Mark Harlan.
If I had to make my own keyboard, it would probably look a lot like the Apple Aluminum. I would just get those damn function keys away from my number keys. And because that thing kills me. Like, I know they want to make it as small as possible, but they're the little dinky function keys being right up against the number keys. There's no reason for that. Like, for years and years, I was an Apple Extended 2 person, and I still have a nice collection of Apple Extended 2s upstairs. And that was my keyboard that I used right up until the point where I was crippling myself. And I still like that better. Like, I don't like scissor keys as much as the Apple Extended 2, but I recognize that the scissor keys are better for me. So, like, they become more attractive, because now when I think about having to hit the clicky keys, it feels good, but only for a short period of time, then it starts to feel worse.
So I thought your Extended 2s were your retirement plan, so you could sell them all to group.
Yeah, that's the plan now. Like, my keyboard, my left control key, which is apparently the only control key I use because I don't type correctly, my left control key at work started sticking, and I tried to repair it, and it's the first. I've taken apart scissor keys many times, Apple's scissor keycaps, and this was the first time I successfully reassembled it, because those things are not easy to put back together. Like, especially if they come apart and you have all the pieces loose and you don't remember how they went. Luckily now they have YouTube videos and stuff to give you hints, but it is a very tricky process. Anyway, I got the key back together after cleaning it out, and it's still stuck, so I got a new keyboard. But that's one downside to scissor keys, is
you pretty much can't service them.
You can. Like, I was proud of myself. I was so excited. Now I feel like I could take off an Apple scissor keycap and put it back successfully after only 15 minutes of swearing. but when I'm done, it will work like it did before. Like, it won't be off kilter. Like, if you look at such tiny little parts in there, it's amazing that the thing functions at all. It's extremely delicate, tiny little flanges and pins and stuff. But there's something else wrong with that. I don't know why it was sticking. I brought it home with me so I could bring it down to the lab and try dousing it in alcohol or running it through the dishwasher, or all the other things they said you can do on the web to one of these keyboards.
Wait, what else is in the lab?
You know what I mean. Theoretically, it's like when the Grinch is going to take your Christmas tree to check the lights. So that's not actual lab.
A scratch, not a shrapnel wound, not a cut, not a gunshot wound. We saw rows of dead lined up in burial shrouds. The white linen unstained by a single drop of blood.
But Syria, supported by its Russian ally, maintains it never used chemical weapons. NPR's Tom Bowman says that some U.S. lawmakers want to take a wait-and-see approach before striking Syria.
Some members of Congress who were briefed last night by administration officials say they're still waiting to see more forensic evidence. Now, that could be blood or tissue, soil samples that experts say would prove what chemical agent was used.
The Obama administration is dealing with less Allied support than it hoped, most notably Britain's. Prime Minister David Cameron's government unexpectedly failed to get the support of the majority in Parliament. NPR's Philip Reeve says political inquests are now underway into why that happened.
The rejection of military action by parliamentarians has derailed Cameron's Syria policy and rattled the foundations of his government. Cameron says he's determined to continue pursuing a robust approach towards Assad, but he's confirmed Britain will not take part in possible missile strikes.
Parliament has spoken very, very clearly about its views about military involvement. That doesn't stop us condemning chemical weapons. It doesn't stop us condemning the Assad regime. It doesn't stop us working with allies to bring the maximum pressure on this regime and the appalling things that it's doing. But on the specific issue of British military action, I think that was the message of the debate.
Cameron says he regrets that in that debate he was unable to secure a consensus. Philip Reeves, NPR News, London.
Before the closing bell, Dow is down 31 points at 14,810. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from Columbia Records, presenting Bob Dylan's new album, Another South Portrait, the Bootleg Series, Volume 10, 1969 to 1971.
This is WAMU 88.5. Good afternoon. I'm Pat Rogan. It's 4:04. With the latest on traffic, here's Mike Cremitas. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon, Pat. Outer loop, very heavy, 95 Maryland past New Hampshire Avenue from an earlier incident taken out of the way. Also slow before Telegraph to the Wilson Bridge. Interloop delays before the toll road past Rockville Pike and 95 Maryland past Baltimore Avenue. Northbound 270 slow, Gaithersburg to Clarksburg. Northbound at BW Parkway delays Beltway to Powder Mill. Also very heavy northbound 395 before the Pentagon to the 3rd Street Tunnel. Southbound 95 Virginia heavy Dale City past Quantico. Then it's off and on to Stafford. I'm Mike Cremitas.
87 degrees now, Northwest Washington. A bill requiring Walmart
In 1842, I left the old world for the new. Bad sister, the luck that brought me through to work upon the railway. Tell me, ori, ori.
16 tons, one gets none of the old
100 years ago, most jobs involved physical work. Whether it was heavy labor out on the railroad or manual labor in a factory, we worked with our bodies.
Today, for most people, physical labor has been replaced by mental labor.
Code monkey, get up, get coffee. Code monkey, go to job. Code monkey, have boring meeting. Boring manager, Rob.
Mind you, it can still be pretty tedious, although you don't have to wear work boots to write code.
Ah, this subroutine is stuck in the for loop. Barney, do you really need those steel-toed boots? Hey, there are a lot of sharp corners in the server room.
So, in the last century, many occupations have gone from muscle to mental, and sometimes not even a whole lot of that.
I'll have a hamburger and 2 orders of fries, please.
So, 3 fries?
No, 2 fries.
Oh, I hit 3. Did you want fries with that?
But in the 22nd century, how will today's jobs look to our descendants? Will there even be jobs? Perhaps automation and improved computation, robots and the internet, will bring about as much change as machinery did for our Industrial Revolution predecessors.
It's an intriguing thought. So what if we follow it a little farther? Welcome to the Big Picture Science Laboratory, in which we imagine life without work. What technologies might take the stress and strain off of us so that we can enjoy endless leisure?
Whoa, it's time to uncross and cross my legs again. Ah, there we go. Now, voice-activated television, screen number 7. Let's watch my favorite reality show, Americans Are Idol. All 5 seasons, take it from the top. And can I get some popcorn?
Well, I might offer a book, but the point here is, in our laboratory, we can conjure up this endless leisure world. I'm Seth Shostak.
I'm Molly Bentley.
The first thing we might imagine in our laboratory when we think of reducing our workload is robots. Shiny aluminum alloy androids doing our jobs for us, like Robbie the Robot, or this guy.
More exploded kernels of corn, sir. And churned fatty bovine lactation on this batch as well? Yeah, more popcorn with butter, thanks. And yes, with sodium chloride.
But that's not the only version of our robot future anymore. You could say that the roboticists have gone soft. They're developing squishy, plushy automatons to stand in for those hard-edged metallic models. The future of labor devices that deal directly with humans will be soft robotics.
I think what we want to do is make sure that biology gets into the field of soft robotics as much as we can.
It's a back-to-nature engineering approach that scientists such as Barry Trimmer are imagining. The field is combining many disciplines, from biology to computer engineering and materials science.
And as a sign that this technology is really going places, soft robotics has spawned its own journal. As a biologist and a neuroscientist, and now editor-in-chief of Soft Robotics, Professor Trimmer says there's a lot of research needed to engineer what's required to build these pliable pals. For example, new sources of energy and new kinds of materials.
I think the hot topics are going to be how to make things move without motors, how to make hybrid machines, in other words, things that actually are composed both of living tissue and of machinery.
It's a still nascent vision for robots and of our future.
Barry, as we look to a future where robots do all the work for us, or at least some of the work for us, allowing us to catch up on our television miniseries, how might soft robots take the load off better than the hard types that we usually consider our robots?
Well, the big problem with robots that we think of today is that they're based on factory machines. So they're hard and they're fast and powerful, and they really do a good job in factories and very fixed situations, but they're really not very good at working in the home or the office environment, so you don't see robots in those situations. And I think what soft robotics is aiming to do, its target is to try and make robots much more available and accessible to do lots of things around in presence of humans and in natural environments.
Well, maybe we should define what a soft robot is. I mean, I think of soft rock or soft drink or something, and they're not, they're not the serious models. So what is a soft robot? Is it just a kind of a laid-back robot?
That would be nice, but I think we also want to think of robots as being much more organic. A soft robot, to my way of thinking, is something that's much more like an animal. So it doesn't have to be completely squishy, but it needs to be made largely of soft components, and that makes it work much better when you're trying to deal with it in the house. And we don't currently know how to build those sorts of things, actually. That's really the reason for this field being quite nascent.
Do you think that the fact that robots today are made out of hard materials, that is aluminum or plastic or whatever, I mean, it's tough stuff compared to the kinds of things that we're made out of or our animal buddies are made out of. Do you think that this could partially account for the fact that, we've been talking about having helper robots in the home, at the office for decades, and we still don't have those guys? Is it because they're kind of incompatible?
Paralyzed. And frankly, part of the challenge that we end up with here is that a lot of people think something should be done, but nobody wants to do it.
So the president says he'll continue to consult with international allies, he'll continue to consult with Congress, but he made it pretty clear that if he feels the U.S. has to act on its own, it will.
Thank you, Scott.
My pleasure, Robert.
That's NPR's Scott Horsley at the White House.
And now with their thoughts on Syria and what the United States should or should not do, columnist E.J. Giano of the Washington Post. Hey, E.J.
How are you?
And filling in this week for David Brooks, Ramesh Ponnuru with National Review. Ramesh, welcome back.
Thanks.
And let's start with you, Ramesh. You have written that military action against Syria would have no clear objective, no legal basis, no public support. You say, stay out. Why?
Well, I think we're in a situation where people have this urge to do something. This is something, so therefore let's do that. And I don't see what the strategic objective is. If we're going to punish the Syrian regime and hold it accountable, that, it seems to me, is an argument for regime change, which we're not willing to do because it's such a massive commitment. Anything short of that, on the other hand, just to me seems sort of pointless.
And by contrast, EJ, you say something short of that does have a point. What is that point?
Yeah, I very reluctantly think we need to act. It's not just that President Obama boxed himself in by drawing a red line, although he did do that, and I think his standing depends a lot on living up to what he actually said. But he drew that red line for a reason, which is that when chemical weapons are used, and God forbid against your own people, this is breaching a very important international norm. Having said that, this is full of peril. I think the most hopeful view is that we might with strikes weaken President Assad's military enough that it might encourage him to the negotiating table. But there's no easy, it's not easy to expect that. But it would be the best scenario.
Well, let's listen to some more of what Secretary of State Kerry had to say today. He had some very impassioned remarks laying out what he called clear and compelling evidence that Syria is responsible for those chemical weapons attacks. And he asked, what is the risk of doing nothing?
It matters because if we choose to live in a world where a thug and a murderer like Bashar al-Assad can gas thousands of his own people with impunity, even after the United States and our allies said no, and then the world does nothing about it, there will be no end to the test of our resolve and the dangers that will flow from those others who believe that they can do as they will.
And when he mentions those others, he refers to Iran, Hezbollah, North Korea feeling emboldened if the U.S. doesn't act. Ramesh Ponnuru, isn't that a very real danger here? What message do you think would be sent to Bashar al-Assad and others if the U.S. does nothing?
Well, what's the message sent if the U.S. Undertakes a basically symbolic action? Isn't the message then, look, you can do these things, and then the U.S. will undertake some basically ineffectual action, but you will stay in power. The U.S. won't even try to get you out of power. It seems to me that, again, that's an argument for regime change. It's not an argument for a limited strike.
EJ?
Well, first of all, I don't know that we can assume that the action is ineffectual. It's not like he is going to be throwing missiles into a lake somewhere. And so I think part of what they're trying to figure out is how can they have an attack which on the one hand doesn't suck us completely into the civil war, but on the other hand has some real impact on his military, and we're going to see how they figure that out. But I think Ramesh's comments and the comments of some conservatives reflect a fundamental political problem that the president has, which is that Democrats always include a very large group of doves who just won't want to do this even if Barack Obama is president. On the other hand, Republicans are far more willing to rally to the president when their guy is in power. I looked up some numbers. A recent NBC poll just out shows that only 41% of Republicans say they'd support this strike. It goes up a little bit if you say it's a limited strike. When we started the Iraq War in March of 2003, 91% of Republicans supported that. So the president can't count on a big chunk of his own party, and Republicans who I think would support this under another president won't support it under President Obama.
Ramesh Ponnuru, would they support it under a Republican president, do you think?
Well, I think the Iraq War parallel is an interesting one. But keep in mind with Iraq, there's obviously in retrospect lots of arguments about how that debate went wrong. But there was debate. It was a prolonged debate. It occupied months where it was the #1 issue on the public agenda. This, by contrast, hasn't had a lot of groundwork laid for it. It's not just that there isn't Republican support. There just isn't a lot of public support. There was majority public support for going into Iraq in 2003. Again, I just don't see the level of commitment you need to undertake an action of this kind.
One thing, by the way, I think Ramesh and I may agree on is I do think there should be a congressional debate on this. And I think that it's not just up to the president to call Congress back. I think that Speaker Boehner and Harry Reid should call people back. I think a lot of members of Congress are hoping to duck a vote on this because they know it's unpopular. They don't want to take responsibility for it. I think it would be better if there were a congressional debate. It helped the first President Bush in the war with Kuwait, even though the vote was very close, because we really argued it out.
We're talking one day after a shocking defeat in Britain for British Prime Minister David Cameron, with the House of Commons defeating a watered-down measure, one that wasn't even going to authorize strikes themselves. Ramesh Ponnuru, how damaging is it to President Obama and the United States to not have Britain at its side, to be effectively going it alone?
I think it makes it a lot harder for the administration to go forward with this because, we talked a lot during the Iraq War about the coalition of the willing, but everybody knows that it was primarily a U.S.-British show. And that this time that's not going to be the case because Cameron didn't just say, I'm going to take this under advisement. He didn't even put in a qualifier that I could come back to Parliament if the situation changes. He said, look, we're just not going to participate.
He said, I get it.
Right.
EJ.
My favorite comment on this came from a tweet from Russ Douthat, the New York Times columnist, who said, "From now on, all English muffins will be known as freedom muffins." And I think what's interesting about that is not only that I thought it was funny, but that the ferocity you had against countries that didn't cooperate with us the last time, freedom fries about the French, does not exist now, because there is a lot of doubt about this. And I also, as I said, I think our conservative friends don't support this. But this is much harder without the British, who are our close allies. 39 members of Cameron's coalition deserted him on this. They really have Iraq fatigue and also dodgy dossier fatigue from the last time around.
Last word, Ramesh, briefly.
Sure, it's not just the intelligence, it's the Pottery Barn rule. Is the other legacy of Iraq, that people think if you get involved, does the state in Syria just disintegrate and we're left picking up the pieces?
The idea being, if you break it, you buy it. Ramesh Ponnuru, senior editor with National Review and visiting fellow at the American Enterprise.